Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture. Please confirm that you can see my screen and hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So the paper we are discussing in this week is about Spectre attacks. So I will try to cover it as much as we can. But again, we have presentation today. So, if you have any questions while I'm covering the slides, please stop me, and after every couple of slides, I will stop and try to entertain your questions, right? I'm skipping this the outline slides. By the way, I have not prepared these slides. I have downloaded them from the website of the author of one of the author of this paper. So let's first talk about the highlights of this attack, like what are the main features. So the basic thing is that this Spectre attack, uh, it uh, it allows the attacker to read out the secret data or private data of a victim process, a victim process which is free of any bugs. So there are no there are no coding bugs, there are no how to say memory bugs in the victim process, in the code of the victim process, but still the attacker process is able to read out its secret data, right? How? By taking advantage of the speculative execution. What is speculative execution? We will talk about that in a minute. This attack works on a variety of platforms, which means variety of processors from all main manufacturers like Intel, AMD, and ARM. How this attack works? So for that, let's have a quick background. So what we know is that in computer systems, we have this idea of virtual memory, and the advantage of the virtual memory is that it provides the process isolation. Process isolation means that one process cannot read the memory content or the memory which is mapped in the address space of another process, right? So, for example, in this figure, you have, let's say, two processes, like multiple processes, process 1 to n. And on the left side, we have the virtual memory. So, and then that virtual memory is mapped into the physical memory, right? And then there is like mechanism which performs the mapping, for example, page table, right? And the thing is, like, if process one tries to access the memory of any other process, it will not be allowed. It will be blocked, right? So this is at least the assumption, or this is at least the uh, process isolation guarantee provided by the provided by the systems by mean of virtual memory or by mapping virtual memory to physical memory. Okay, so what is cover channel? We by this time I think we already know what is cover channel. So it is actually a way through which two processes can communicate through each other, but this way of communication is not architecturally defined, which means that there are some architectural components uh, who are not defined or constructed for the purpose of communication between two processes, but they are abused by two processes to communicate with each other. And as a result, this abusive use of the architectural components breaks the process isolation. So example of states that can be used as a cover channel are, for example, cache timing, instruction timing, ALU contention, and memory contention, right? So we already know how caches work. So, but let me quickly go through this slide. So caches, they are supposed to speed up the access of the memory located data by the code running in the CPU, right? So, for example, whenever CPU need to access data, at first it will look in the cache hierarchy. If the data is not found in the cache hierarchy, it's mean that it is a miss and the data access will be slow, which mean that now we need to go down to the memory and then bring the data from the memory into the into the cache, right? But next time, if the CPU tries to access the same data again, so since a copy of that data was made in the cache, So now it will be a hit in the cache, and the second access on the same data will be faster. So how cache timing can be used as a covert channel? So here we have an example of it. For example, let's say sender process has a value which it wants to transmit to the receiver process, right? So what will happen is that sender will change the cache, for example, by it loads its value, or maybe it evicts the value in a the data from the cache in a value dependent way, right? And receiver then can see that whether the value is in the cache directly, but okay, it cannot see the value directly in the cache, but what it can do is that it can time its cache access. And if the cache access is faster or slower, depending upon that, it can infer whether that value was accessed, what value was accessed by the sender. So, for example, let me just try to visualize this for you. So let's say you have this cache, right? So this is some cache entry, let's say, and here you have a victim, and here you have attacker process. I'm writing A for it, right? And let's say that victim wants to send a value of uh, so let's say the victim is running the code. If let's say x is equal to 1, right? So if x is equal to 1, access byte b1 or data b1, whatever you want to say. Else access byte b2, right? So now let's say this victim process. So let's first we assume that attacker makes sure that B1 and B2, they both of them are not both of them are not cached in the cache, right? And then it waits for victim to execute the code. So if victim now executes this code, and let's say x is equal to 1, it will read the B1. So if it reads the B1, it will leave a copy of the data in the cache, right? Now let's say after that A comes back and it tries to read the B1, right? So since now B1 is in the cache, it will take less time for the attacker to get the data from the cache. Since it is the time is latency is low, it can infer that x is equal to 1, right? Because B1 is placed in the cache only when x is equal to 1, right? So here, this in this context, the sender process is victim and receiver process is the attacker process. Okay. So sender is changing the cache content by loading, for example, it can be loading, it can be eviction, but in the example we saw loading. So sender is changing the cache value by cache content by loading a byte in a value dependent way. So if x is equal to 1, it loads b1. If x is not equal to 1, then it loads b2, right? And receiver, it cannot directly see the value in the cache. Attacker cannot see here that value of x is equal to 1, but due to the by timing its cache access, for example, how long it takes for A to access the V1. If it is a hit, it takes much less time, and if it is less time, then it's mean x was equal to 1 for the victim, right? So based on that, on the cache timing, it can infer the value. Okay, let me complete these background slides, and then I will take your questions. Okay. So what is speculative execution? Still, we are talking about the background, right? So what is speculative execution? So speculative execution is a way for enhancing the computing speed of the processes. So there are various types of speculative components of speculation mechanism in modern processors. For example, prefetchers. So in prefetcher, what you do is that uh, that your processor, it will monitor the access pattern of a program, and then depending upon the access pattern, it will fetch in advance the data which will be needed in the future, right? So for example, let's say you have an array of elements, right? And let's say you have 100, I don't know, maybe 1000 elements of an array, and all the elements are accessed by one by one. So you have hardware components in your processor which are actually monitoring the access pattern. So if they, let's say they say that, okay, the first 10 accesses are in sequence, like addresses next to each other in the memory, right? So then this prefetcher hardware will decide, decide that, okay, or it will at least predict that what I have seen is that previous last 10 accesses were in sequence. So when I am accessing now the 11th element, what I can do is that I can prefetch the next maybe four elements without waiting for CPU to ask for those elements, so that in future when the CPU will ask for those elements from the memory, by that time those data elements or array elements, they will be already in the cache, and as a result CPU will have not to wait and its execution will be faster, right? So that is known as prefetching. Branch predictor, I think we have talked about it in one of the previous lectures, or maybe in the first paper we were discussing about, right? Intel SGX. So the basic idea of the branch predictor is the following. Okay, anyone who want to explain what is the job of the branch predictor? Okay, let me first take these questions and then I can ask you if anyone who want to explain what is job of the predictor. Okay. One protection the paper proposes was an exclusive R pointer values with a poison value. Where would this occur at the hardware level? Okay, when we reach to that part of the presentation of the lecture, we were talking about the mitigation, then we can take care of it. What specification does the professor make in hardware that you could be used as a side channel? Okay, I will take this question after my question. Anyone who want to explain what is the job of a branch predictor? Anyone who want to explain? You can unmute yourself if you want to respond.
I guess uh, it's like to guess which way a program would go at a branch before the CPU actually knows the answer.
Yeah, before actually your branch is resolved, because resolving the branch takes time, as you need to bring in the data from the memory, possibly. So we don't want to wait for that, and as a result, we use the branch prediction, and uh, we predict which way the program will go, as you said. Yes. Okay. So that is the job of the branch prediction. I'm not going to then explain because your friend has already said it correctly. Okay, anyone who want to explain what is branch target buffer or BTB? What is the purpose of BTB? Why is it used? You can unmute yourself if you want to respond. Okay, so let's say you have a code, right? So let's say you have a register. Maybe I need to use one node to explain this thing. So you guys can still see my screen. Please respond if you can, right? You can see my OneNote screen, right? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So suppose you have this code. Uh, let's say I'm just making up some memory of I. I is a number, like you are running a loop, and I2, I don't know, some limit, some, and what you are doing, you are reading the data from memory location I and putting it in R1, and then you are saying jump R1, right? Go to this address R1, and then you have a I don't know, you do something, and then you need to go back to jump loop, right? So here what you are doing, that in every iteration of this loop, You are jumping to a memory location which is dictated by the content of R1. Now, what is the content of R1? Content of R1 is changing every iteration of the loop, right? So because let's say it is dependent upon the loop index, right? So and from that, based on the loop index, you are reading something from memory, some from a memory location, putting it in R1 and using that value, what you read from the memory as an address, and you are saying, okay, go to this R1, right? Now, here what is happening that uh, you know that this is not conditional jump, right? This is not conditional branch, so it is unconditional. But what is the problem? The problem here is that you need to know this address, the destination address of the jump. Where are you supposed to jump? Is R1 maybe in first iteration, let's say R1 resolves to 100 for when I was equal to 0. So if I is equal to 0, R1 becomes equal to 100. If I is equal to, let's say, 1, R1 becomes equal to, I don't know, maybe 1000, right? So, but you cannot find this value of 100. Why? It takes time to find the value of R1. Why? Because from where you are getting the value of R1 from memory location, right? So it takes time. So it's mean you need to wait for this the value to become available and put in the R1, which means that it is getting slow, right? So what you do is like you can use basically uh, a branch target buffer. So what is target buffer? In branch target buffer, you have entries, and in each entry, here you have address, and here you have the target address. And here when I say address, it is basically the instruction address. What is the address of this instruction, right? I don't know, maybe let's say use some imaginary address A1, right? So if it is A1, target address will be, let's say, uh, I don't know, target address is, I don't know, 100, right? Uh, so the basic idea is that it takes time to resolve this address. So we don't want to wait until this address, the target address is resolved. So what you do is that you maintain a table, and in that table, what you maintain on one side is the address of the instruction, and on the other side, the target address of that uh, indirect jump or uh, indirect branch, right? So every time now, if in future the same address is again encountered, then what you will say you will not wait for this address to be resolved. You will simply look into the table and you will find, okay, last time when this address appeared here, instruction address, the target address was 100. So now I'm not going to wait for it, and the execution will go to the address 100, and from there, the next instruction will be fetched, right? So this is like the job of the branch target buffer. So it also like saves your time and speeds up the execution. So all of these speculative execution approaches, they lead to improved instruction level parallelism. Because if you don't use them, then it's mean you are asking the CPU to wait until if there is no prefetching, your CPU will be waiting until all the data is fetched only when it is demanded. If there is no branch prediction, your CPU will be waited until branch is resolved. If there is no branch target buffer, your CPU will be waiting until your target address is resolved, right? Which mean it is like becomes available. So which mean that you are slowing down your execution. So what does the branch predictor do? Just like as your friend said, like if, for example, if let's say you have this piece of code, right? So if slow condition, do something else, do something, right? So first thing is like you need to first test the condition. So one option is that you start the evaluation of the condition and wait until the condition is evaluated, right? The other option is you don't evaluate the condition, you ask the branch predictor, and if the branch predictor says that the branch is taken, so you immediately start executing the if block of code, right? So this becomes faster. So this type of like speculative execution, it allows you up to 100 instruction ahead. 100 instruction ahead mean like by the time, for example, in this previous slide, by the time this condition is actually resolved, by that time you had already executed maybe 200 instructions are in this block of code, if block of code. So what if that your prediction turns out to be wrong, right? So in that case, you need to revert the result of the incorrect execution, right? Here, for example, you predicted that the branch will be taken, but let's say it turns out that it was misprediction and actually it should have not be taken. So which means that this part was supposed to be executed. Then what you need to do, the 200 instructions or 100 instructions, whatever number of instructions you have executed, you need to revert their impact or their effect, right? If you remember from the first paper, when we're talking about reorder buffer, we covered how the result of those incorrect result of incorrect execution is reverted, right? So if we don't end up having any correctness issue, but the problem is that the speculative execution, it leaves behind some side effects which can then be exploited to launch the attacks, right? So that was all about background. Now let's have a Spectre attacks. So the main idea of the main mechanism of the Spectre attack is the following. First, your attacker process or the adversary, it needs to locate the sequence of instructions in the address space of the victim or in the program of the victim process, which acts as a covert channel transmitter, right? What does it mean? I will explain. Okay. So first you need to mistrain the CPU into speculatively executing these instructions. So it could be like you are mistraining the branch predictor or you are mistraining the branch target buffer, right? But you need to mistrain some component of the CPU in such a way that it induces the speculative execution of uh, uh, a speculative execution of instructions uh, which you want victim to execute, right? We will have an example, so it will become very clear to you. What does it mean uh, by identifying the instructions and then by inducing the speculative execution in the victim? Second phase is that once you trick the victim into speculatively executing the identified set of instructions or transient instructions in its address space. After that, you wait for the victim to execute them and leak the information. So, and then the third phase is that attacker comes back and then it tries to recover the data by retrieving that leaked data over covert channel. Okay, and that covert channel can be like cache timing, execution timing, ALU contention, memory contention, or any other micro architectural state which can uh, uh, give some timing information. So there are two variants of the Spectre attack which they have covered in this paper. So first variant, so this is the first variant which basically uh, relies on mistraining the branch predictor, right? And I have not prepared this slide as the other slides as well. I haven't prepared them, but this particular slide I have simply taken the screenshot from this YouTube video. Okay, so actually, in this slide, they have explained I think, the variant one of the Spectre attack in a better way than they have explained it in the paper. Actually, this is from the same from the presentation from one of the authors of the paper. Okay, so now let's say that in the victim address space or in the code of the victim, you have found a code which looks like this one or which follows this pattern, right? So where you have a condition x less than array one of size. So here you are basically checking the array bound, and x here we are assuming is a variable which is controlled by the attacker. So it is an input which is provided by attacker, right? So first we are checking that if x is less than the array size, size of array one. If yes, then what you are doing is that you access array one at index x, and then it is multiplied with some number, 512, or maybe even not with any number, right? But let's say in this example, they are multiplying it with 512, and then it will give you some result, right? Array 1 of x, whatever the value is, then you multiply that value of array 1 of x with 512, which then becomes index. And from that index, you read the data of array 2, right? So here, what we are assuming is that the assumption here is that first attacker, what was the first phase? The first phase was, if I take you back here, locate the sequence of instruction which act as a covert channel transmitter, right? And so let's say we have located this. Attacker has located this set of instructions in the address space of the victim. What was then in the setup phase, what the attacker need to do? Attacker need to induce the speculative execution of this set of instructions. How? So in the following way, let's say that in memory you have array 1 located in memory, and like let's say like this. So you have this sequence of bytes containing array 1, content of array 1, right? And then there is another region of memory next to it, which contains some secret information of the victim process, which let's say I'm writing as private data or PD, right? And then there is another sequence of bytes after that, which contains array 2, right? I'm just writing A2, right? So, and again, there is this underlying assumption, which is not explicitly stated here, but which is understood that uh, the code which is executed, uh, the code which is executed by the victim and by the attacker process, it is the same code. Same code mean it is maybe a shared library of the code, right? However, the data which is processed by the victim process and by the attacker process, they are different, right? So here, what is assumed is the following, that somehow attacker is able to evict array 1 underscore size from the cache. So it is not located in the cache, right? Array 2 is also not located in the cache. There is like array 2 is not in the cache. It is removed from the evicted from the cache. Array 1's underscore size variable is evicted from the cache. And we are also assuming that previously during its execution, victim process, let's say the victim process was executing before the attacker started executing its own execution. And during that execution, what it did, that it accessed its private data and left behind the copy of the private data in the cache, right? So like you have the copy of the private data in the cache, right? But then uh, what did the attacker do? That, for example, through CL flush, it removed array 1 underscore size from the so what it does is that it gives the input value of x such that it is smaller than the array 1 size. So this, like every time the branch is taken, like let's say you mistrain the branch predictor. So like let's say 100 times you provide the value of x less than array 1 of size. Let's say array 1 of size is 100. So first you provide value of x equal to 1, then 2, then 3, then 1, then 2, then 3. You train the predictor. So predictor assumes that yes, this branch is always taken. Now, if this branch is always taken, once you have mistrained it, next time you provide a value which is out of the bound. Let's say 200, right? So since it will take time to compare 200 with array 1 underscore size, so the prediction will be performed, which will say that okay, the branch is taken. Now, if the branch is taken, now what will happen is that first your array 1 of x will be accessed, right? So what is X that you have provided this time? 200, right? So if it is 200, so if A1 is ending here, let's say this is 100 here. This is the last element of the array 1, and 200 is something, let's say, in this region, right? So you are accessing some a byte which is private data of the victim, in which you are interested to steal it or interested to read it out, right? And then whatever value you have at this address, at like array 1 plus 200 here, that value is read. Let's say the data which is stored here is D1, right? So D1 times 512 is multiplied with 512, and whatever index you get from that index, array 2 is read, right? So here what happens is that uh, so here you first predict that if condition is true, so then as a result of that prediction, you read the address from array 1 base plus X, right? With out of bound X, as I explained here, right? And then this will return you some secret byte, right? So secret byte which is shown here, for example, as which has the value 09, right? So what happens is that uh, after that, attacker can start its own execution, and it can start accessing all the elements in the array 2. So any array 2 element which is accessed in lower time, it's mean it was already cached in the cache, so which means that it was accessed by the victim. Okay. So let me try to explain the same variant one using another example. So suppose that uh, you have so suppose that we want to find out a certain byte in the virtual address of the victim, and that certain byte is K, right? So let's call this secret byte K. And again, we are assuming a similar code. If X is less than array 1 underscore size, Y is equal to array 2, array 1 of X. So let's now the attacker need to locate a conditional which matches this pattern in the software of the victim that we want to attack, right? So in the setup phase, you will first call many times uh, with some X less than array 1 size to mistrain the branch predictor. So the branch predictor will then assume that this branch is always taken. And also, what you need to do is that then you go ahead, like let's say you as you call 100 times, and now the branch predictor is trained for always taking the branch, and then you evict the array 1 underscore size from the cache, and you also evict array 2 from the cache, but you leave the secret byte in K in cache. What is the secret byte K in cache? We are assuming that it is some secret data which was accessed by victim during its execution, right? So in the second phase, what you need to do is that you need to choose X out of bounds such that array 1 of X resolves to the secret byte, right? So here is like a visual depiction of what it means. So suppose that this is your secret byte of the victim which you want to access a secret data, right? What is the value of that? It is 2, and it was cached. The tag is 01. So if you remember from our uh, discussion of the first paper, tags are like a part of the address. So for example, let's say most significant 2 bits, we are using them as a tag. So this is the tag in the cache, right? So this secret data was accessed by victim, and it was left behind in the cache, right? But we want to know the value of that data. And when I say we, it's mean as an attacker, right? So here, let's say in the memory, you have these locations 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So array 1 is, let's say, consisted of only 2 elements, 4 and 13. So at address 0 and 1. Array 2 is consist of only 3 elements, 75, 24, 87, located at address 5, 6, and 7, right? And in between, there is some other data. and the data which is stored at address 3 is basically the secret data of the victim in which we are interested, right? So let's say that after mistraining the predictor, attacker provides the address x is equal to 3, right? So which is the address of the secret byte which it wants to read, right? So then what will happen? First, this comparison will be made, but cache will be missed. Why the cache will be missed? Because remember, array 1 size was kicked out of the cache. So there will be a cache miss, so it will take longer time to execute. So since it will take longer time to execute, but the predictor was mistrained, so it will assume that the branch will be taken. So if the branch will be taken, what will happen? That array 1 of x will be accessed. Array 1 of x is what? Which means the third element. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So the third element, this element will be accessed and will be brought in into the, it will be accessed, and then uh, this 2 will be used as an index for array 2, right? So which means the uh, second element at index 2 will be accessed in array 2. So 0, 1, and 2, right? So when it will be accessed, so it will be fetched back and it will be copied in the cache, right? Now, in the final phase, what the attacker will do, array 2 will be read by attacker, and it will load array to n for all n. So what you will basically do that attacker will access all elements of this array one by one, right? So since 75 was not read into the cache, it will be a miss. I'm just writing M. Since 24 was not read into the cache, it will be miss. Since 87 was read, it will be a hit. Since it will be a hit, it's mean that uh, array 2 of so what was accessed? Array 2 of 2 was accessed, right? So if array 2 of 2 was accessed, so it's mean n is equal to k, which mean that we have accessed that secret byte here. Okay. So that was the secret byte we were interested in because that secret byte was used as an index of array 2, right? So if we have a hit at that index, it means that this secret byte was left behind in the cache by the victim. The other processes are also operations or other mechanisms are also possible to exfiltrate the private information, for example, using prime and probe, or for example, by using the eviction, which we have not covered here, but we just assume that the attacker was able to flush this out, and array 2 was also attacker was able to flush out. So basically what we are saying, what if CL flush is not allowed as a user level process, right? So then how can we make sure that there is no cache hit? uh, how can we make sure that array 1 underscore size is still not in the cache? So by that, what the attacker can do is that it can induce a cache eviction. Okay, let me have a look at your question. What does the attacker need the victim? Why does the attacker need the victim code to use array 1? Why does the attacker need the victim code to use array 1 as an index first? Yeah, because okay, let me go. So I think you are talking about like why array 2 is using value returned by array 1 of x as a code, right? So the reason for that is like it is not a necessary requirement, but uh, the thing is like maybe if you simply change this code, like if you replace it with array 2 of x, right? It will it will still work. It will still work in the sense like if x is out of bound and the location which is pointed by this array 2 underscore x is basically holding a secret data, then that secret data will be left behind in the cache again. But in the context of this particular example, we are assuming that array 1 of x uh, points to the secret data. not array2 of x. So that is like the answer to your question is you ask why array1 of x need to be read by the victim. That depends upon this particular code snippet, right? So it is not like your attack mechanism is not dependent upon this code. If you modify this set code, still it will work. Okay, what on the slide, why does the attacker care about which value from array 2 becomes a cache hit? Uh, it's not the question of like why the attacker care about which value from array 2 becomes a cache hit. It is the question is like uh, it is interested in reading a secret data, right? But it knows the address of the secret data, but it doesn't know the value of that secret data. It knows where the secret data is located in the address space of the victim. But what is the value of that secret data? Attacker doesn't know it, and it wants to find it, right? So if you if I take you back to the slide here, so for example, here uh, we want to know the value of this byte, right? Value of this byte. What value we are interested in knowing what is stored here. Is it stored the value is 2 or is the stored value is 3 or 4? We don't know, right? So attacker that's why attacker want to extract the value of 2. It knows the address, which is like this address here, right? And how it, so it is the address where the secret is stored, and how it specifies this address by putting it in X. So for example, in X, you place the value of 3. So if you place the value of 3, so you reach at this point, but since it's not the data of the attacker process, or the data is not mapped in the address space of the attacker process, attacker cannot read that data directly. However, it can indirectly read. How can it indirectly read? As just I explained. So for example, if I walk you again through this example, so if x is equal to 3, so array third element of array element at index 3 of array 1 is accessed. So here 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So the value becomes 2. Now that 2 becomes as an index of array 2. So which means that access the element at index 2 of array 2. So 0, 1, 2. So it is fetched back here, right? So now uh, when attacker executes its own code, so it tries to access the array 2. So here we are assuming that array 2 is like not private to the victim. It is like shared between attacker and the victim. So now when array it accesses the array 2, so it accesses all elements one by one. So first it accesses this element at index 0. So since it was not read and placed in the cache, so it is a miss. So then it increases the index, it accesses the next element, it is also a miss. It next accesses the next element, so it is hit, right? So if it is a hit, it's mean that this is the data. So what is the index here? Index is 2, right? So which is basically the secret data which is extracted from the attacker. I know it is bit convoluted, but it works. If the attacker can't directly read array 2, how does just seeing a cache hit actually tell them the exact value of k? Actually, the attacker can directly read the array 2. So array 2 is what which is like shared data between attacker and victim. What is private is the value of array 1. Okay. Mm, okay, so let me also check the time. I think we have still some time here. So now let me go to the next set of slides. Okay, so they discussed two different variants of the Spectre attack. One was the variant where they were mistraining the branch predictor, and the other variant is one where they are mistraining the branch target buffer, right? So what is the what is the variant? How does the variant 2 works, which actually mistrains the branch target buffer? So here you first need to locate a gadget uh, whose execution gadget in the address space of the victim process, and gadget means nothing but uh, a combination of instructions which are of interest for you as an attacker. Okay, so you want to first locate a gadget in the address space of the victim process whose execution will leak the chosen memory in the place you want to in the process you want to attack. So for example, this is an example gadget. Let's say you have two instructions in the address space of the victim. And when I say in the address space of the victim, it can be like a shared library. A library, let's say you have a code library which is mapped in address space of both attacker and the victim. So if that is the case, the attacker knows what is the content of that code library, right? So, the okay, let me like try to help you visualize this. So suppose this is attacker process, this is victim process, address space of the victim process, right? And here you have some common code library. I'm just naming it as L. Okay, so if the library L is mapped in the virtual address space of A, let's say it is mapped in first 4 kilobyte, like 0 to starting from 0 to like first 4 kilobyte, this library is mapped in this address space, right? And also in the victim, this in the same address range, in the first 4 kilobyte of its address space, this library is also mapped, right? Sorry. And suppose that in this library somewhere you have these two instructions, add and R1 to R2 and move R2 to R3. Actually, it can be also like you can remove these brackets, it will still work. Like you are adding two registers together, and then the result of the addition, you are using it as a memory address and reading data from that memory address and putting it in the R3, right? So let's say these two instructions are located somewhere in the L. So now if these two instructions are, let's say, located in the address space of the attacker, let's say at address 100 and 101, right? So what we are assuming here is that these two instructions will again be mapped at the same addresses in the address space of the victim. Okay. So first you need to what you need to do, you need to locate a gadget whose execution will leak the chosen memory in the process you want to attack, right? So I will then explain how this gadget can be used. So what you mistrain is the branch target buffer. What is branch target buffer? I just explained as I explained earlier. It helps you to quickly resolve the target of the branch. Like when we say target, it's mean where the branch will uh, go. What will be the next instruction after this branch, right? It is not about predicting the direction of the branch. It is about predicting the target address of the branch. Remember, this is not a conditional jump, right? It is an absolute jump. So, for example, if it is saying jump at some register 10, right? R10. Now, what is the value of R10? So, how maybe we don't know how the value of R10 is computed. Maybe it is read from memory, or maybe it is computed by adding some other two registers. So, it will take time. So, and those registers are not yet available. So we don't want to wait for until the R10 is resolved. So one option is that you start evaluating and you wait, which is slow. The other is that you ask branch target buffer. So in branch target buffer, as explained earlier, for every address, you every like in each entry you have an address of the instruction, and against that instruction you have a target address stored based on the execution of that instruction in the past, right? So in the future, when the same instruction at the same address is again encountered, you simply retrieve its target address from the branch target buffer, and then you give it then you use that predicted target address for execution, so it becomes faster. Again, it is possible that the address that you have predicted, it turns out to be wrong, because by the time when the address is resolved, it turns out that your predicted target address was wrong. In that case, you need to revert the computation, right? So in setup phase in variant 2, what you do is that you train the branch target buffer in attacker thread to jump to the chosen gadget's virtual address, right? And this will work because BTB is unaware, or it doesn't care about process IDs. So let me take you to the one node to quickly explain it, then I will take your questions. Okay. So suppose that you have this attacker and this is victim, right? And this is the library code, right? And in the library code, you have this code in the library. Uh, yeah. So in the victim, you in the library, you have this gadget, right? And I'm just assuming that it is at address X, AX, right? So, and you want this code to be executed, right? So first you run the attacker. Let's say that uh, in attacker you have some instruction which says jump at some, I don't know, jump at some target address. I'm just saying target address 1. And the address of this instruction is, let's say, 100, right? And this instruction is executed in loop. So let's say you have loop. I'm just writing while x is equal to 100. And here you are just decrementing x, right? So here what is happening? You are executing this jump instruction multiple times. So what will happen that in the branch target buffer, an entry will be created, right? In that entry, you will have address 100. So this is instruction address, and the target address is TA1, right? Now, let's say I'm saying that TA1 points to the address of this gadget in the address space of the victim, right? So now you have mistrained the branch target buffer. Now, what you do is that in the victim, let's say you have another instruction in the victim address space, which is also at address 100, right? And it says jump some target address 2, right? But what will happen when this jump instruction will be encountered? Your CPU will look in the BTB. So it will say, is there an entry with the instruction address of 100? Yes. So it will say, okay, I don't need to resolve this address. Maybe this, I mean, target address is 2, but maybe it is in a register, or maybe it will come from memory, right? So let's say I'm saying it is in register 10 and it is coming from some memory. So it will take, the point is that it takes time to resolve the address. So CPU will look into the BTB and index it using this address 100. So at the address 100, it finds TA1. So it means that it gets the idea that the next instruction that needs to be executed is at the address, target address 1. So it goes to the victim, it goes to the gadget, and it starts executing these instructions, right? So now when these instructions are executed, what happens is that information is leaked, right? How information is leaked? So for example, let's say these two instructions are uh, add R2, R1, and then move uh, R1, sorry, R2. So it's mean what? It's mean add the value of R1 into R2, and then whatever results you have in R2, use it as an address, memory address, read the data from that memory address and put it in R1, right? Now, now just assume that what happens is that before the execution of the victim, what the attacker has done is that it has placed the values in R1 and it has somehow uh, placed the values in R1 and R2 register such that they are now used by the victim. So now it can, if this gadget is executed, what will happen that the memory access or memory addresses will be accessed based on what was placed in these registers by the victim. So it's mean that now placed by the attacker. Now it's mean that the uh, memory locations of the victim they become visible or they are read and placed in the R1. Since they are placed in the R1, so the data must go through the cache from memory to the through the cache to the register. So a copy is made here in the cache, right? So which means that the copy is left behind, and now the after that the attacker can come back and time the cache access, and as a result of timing, it can infer the information what data was accessed. Okay, let me check your questions. Why does the attacker use an out-of-bound index to temporarily read memory past the end of array 1, where secret data may exist in the same process address space? Yeah, that's correct. In the same same process address space mean address space of the victim process. How are the proper instruction sequences typically discovered? They both access have to the same library, so they can choose by looking at what is available and assume that the victim also use it. So you can assume like this. Let's say uh, you are running let's say you are running your code on a cloud, right? And I am also running my code on a cloud, but our both of our applications are resident on the same machine. But the code which you are running and the code that I am running as an attacker and you are running as a victim, both of us have downloaded that code from some online source, right? So like it is just like, for example, you are doing some assignment in the class. I gave you some code to run, and now all the students in the class know the structure of the files which are provided. So if let's say the assignment completed by two students, they test their assignments on the same platform, but the initial code skeleton which I gave you as an input is the same. All students knows the structure of that code. They know where uh, particular instructions are located, and they can find their addresses. So this is the way how the proper instruction sequence is discovered. Okay. Any questions? Okay, I know we are again running low on time, but we have a presentation today. Who is presenting today? Can you please,
It's me.
uh, Eric?
Yeah.
Okay, have you sent your slides?
Yeah, I submitted it.
Okay, let me have a look. Okay. Okay. Okay, Eric, then I'm sharing my screen. I have downloaded your slides and yeah, you can present, and whenever you want to move to the next slide, please let me know, okay?
Alright. So
Yeah.
today I'm gonna be presenting the paper Spectre Attacks Exploiting Speculative Execution. This paper became very important because in cybersecurity, it showed a feature that was used in modern processors for speed could also be used to steal sensitive information. So the motivation behind this paper was to study whether the speculative execution could be abused. Speculative execution is used by processors to improve speed by guessing what instruction might come next and doing that work early. It helps performance, but researchers wanted to know if it could create a security weakness. And then if that was true, it could matter a lot because many devices use Intel, AMD, and ARM processors. Next. The problem statement is that CPUs make predictions before they know the real answer. And if the processor guesses wrong, it throws away the work and continues. So the issue was that even though the wrong instructions were removed, those traces were left behind in things like cache memory, and attackers can use those traces and use them to learn private information. Next. The main idea of the paper was to show that attackers can trick the CPU into making wrong guesses on purpose. During speculative execution, the processor may temporarily access secret memory, and even if the CPU corrects itself right after, the traces will still remain. So attackers then use the side channel timing attacks to detect what happened. The image here shows how the processor can follow the wrong path before it knows the real result. And then the paper explained two major variants of the Spectre attack. Next. One of the biggest contributions of the paper was introducing the Spectre attack family. The researchers showed that this was not limited to one company because Intel, AMD, and ARM processors were affected. They proved that browsers using JavaScript could be attacked, which made the issue even more serious because then websites could be at risk. So this paper helped expose a major hardware security issue. Next. The researchers were able to leak memory data during their testing, and the attack worked on multiple systems and different processor types. Some tests use native programs while others use JavaScript running in a browser. This was important because it showed the problem was not just theoretical and that it could actually happen in real systems, which is why companies move quickly to create updates and protections. Next. One strength of this paper is that they use real-world testing instead of only theory. The researchers gave clear examples, and all those examples helped explain how the attacks worked. Another strength that is affected is the whole cybersecurity field because it showed that performance features and hardware can have hidden risks. And this research also helped lead to better protections and more focus on hardware security in the future. Next. One weakness that some of the one weakness is that some of the attacks require careful timing and technical knowledge, so they are not simple for everyone to perform. Another weakness is that the topic can be hard for the average user to understand because it involves processor design and memory behavior. Many fixes for Spectre reduce system performance, so a long-term solution would need newer hardware designs instead of just software patches. Next. So one improvement would be designing CPUs with stronger built-in security features from the start. Browser protections should also continue improving since the paper showed JavaScript attacks were possible. Companies should create patches that lower risk without hurting performance too much. It is also important to keep researching these attacks because as technology advances, new weaknesses can appear. And that's it. You're muted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eric, for the presentation. So, are there any questions? Okay, if no, then I have one question, and it is again for everyone, not only for the presenter. So, the question is like, in this paper, they have presented two variant of the Spectre attack, right? One where they are mistraining the branch predictor, and the second where they are mistraining the branch target buffer, right? Now, what is the like major reason, like how they can exploit the mistraining of the component? Doesn't matter whether it is branch predictor or the branch target buffer, how they can benefit by mistraining the component. uh, Anyone who want to answer? Because these components are shared, right? Shared among multiple processes. That's why it is possible that they mistrain a branch predictor in such a way that they can mislead the victim process. Victim process assume that the branch will be taken, but actually it is not taken, right? Or the victim process assumes that the target address will be, let's say, 100, but actually that 100 address points to gadget in its victim space. So the main, like again, if I step back, the main opportunity for an attacker to exploit is that both branch target buffer and branch predictor, they are shared among multiple processes. Now, if we know this, and then if I ask you to devise a solution, a hardware-based solution to mitigate or to protect against the Spectre attack, what will be your uh, suggestions for that? Can we do something? Let me be more specific. Can we make some changes in such a way that an attacker cannot mistrain a branch predictor to deceive the victim process?
I guess I don't know the exact implementation of that would be, but just hardware that could guarantee that wrong path execution isn't observable in some way.
Mm, yeah, but you and I know as a human that the code with the mispredicted path is the wrong path, right? But at the hardware level, we don't know whether a given path is the wrong path or the correct path until the branch is resolved.
Right.
So how can we like make sure that only the correct paths are executed, and if it is a wrong path, it is not observable for the attacker?
Or, I mean, or should software also be responsible for preventing secrets from entering speculative paths? I
But
guess, you know,
but if we don't allow the speculative execution, then it's mean we are sacrificing the performance and significantly, right? They have mentioned, I guess, this in paper. So I don't know, maybe some people have already worked on that or not. But one possible way will be to do a similar approach which we did for the flush plus to mitigate or to defend against the flush plus reload attack. So what we were doing in the flush plus reload attack, do you remember the defense against that attack? Catalyst. So in the catalyst, what they were doing, they were partitioning the cache, right? So they were partitioning the cache into secure and unsecure partitions. And as a result, what happened is that uh, it was not possible for the attacker to do the uh, cache timing analysis based on what is left behind by the victim in the cache. So maybe we can do similar approach with, for example, the branch predictor. So we can like partition the branch predictor, or we can say we can mark or we can tag each branch predictor, uh, or we can assign branch predictors to processes, right? So if you did I explain when we were talking about Intel SGX, did I explain how the branch predictors work, especially those which have tables and have multiple entries in the tables? So anyway, what you can do is like branch predictors, like they have history tables and they have multiple entries. So maybe let's say if you have a table with 16 entries, so you can say, okay, I am partitioning the table. If there are two processes running simultaneously, so the first eight entries, I am assigning them to they can be only used by process one, and the next eight entries, they can be only used by the process two. So in this way, process one cannot mistrain the entries of the process two, which are assigned to the process two in the branch history table in the branch predictor, right? And as a result, it will not be able to deceive the victim into speculatively executing the wrong path. I think, I mean, this is just a rough idea, but I mean, if someone is interested uh, to like explore it, maybe already there are some papers which propose the solution along these lines, like partitioning the branch predictor or partitioning the BTB. So, because if we are partitioning, we are reducing the sharing. If we are reducing or avoiding the sharing of a resource, then it's mean it cannot be exploited it can be not be exploited by attacker to learn some secret information about the victim. Okay, I think we need to stop here. You also need to submit the class participation form. Let me stop sharing this and also stop the recording. But let